And here I am joined on the Wild Sound podcast with Doug Burch, one of the stars from the very tempestuous short film COOP. So thank you so much for joining me today, Doug.
Thank you for having me.
As thick as the tension was in the film, I truly enjoyed being cooped up with you, pun
Oh,
intended,
good.
in watching it. So I am very excited to chat with you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was beyond fun because I kept pushing the writer and the director. I said, you could expand this because I thought there's a lot more there to tell.
That is lovely that you get those projects where
Yeah.
you get to be able to push the boundaries and have agency in the role. But before we dive into Coop, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you, your artist journey, your life journey. What brought you to this point?
It's been kind of an eclectic life. I was raised a military brat, so we traveled all over the world.
Oh.
So I was very lucky to experience a lot of things. Uh, the arts have always been my life. I wanted to be an architect at one time, but I got a scholarship to acting, and I thought, okay, I'll do that. And then I found out that to be an architect, you had to have a 7-year apprenticeship. And I said, I'll be an actor, much easier. So all these years later, we're still playing at
No
it.
kicking. I love it.
So
That's
that kind of, and then I bounced around. I did regional theater, Shakespeare, and then I wound up getting married and moving to Los Angeles. My wife was an actress when we first got married, and she was actually the breadwinner, which was great because I was the kept man. I didn't have any problem with
we love that.
that. But then, but then we started a family, and my career started taking off. So I again have been very lucky the last 30 plus years. I haven't had a real job. I've just been able to make a living as an actor. So
That is the
I
dream.
realize how blessed I am because
Yeah, that's a very rare thing, especially two
yeah,
actors in a house.
yeah,
That
it
is
was so
scary.
my sons, we have two sons, and I told them when they were little, I said, when you go to therapy, it won't be because I wasn't around, it's because I was around too much. So that's gonna be that's gonna be your thing.
I love that. I think that's a better problem to have, quite
I
frankly.
think so. Yeah.
You live and you learn about what you want to do and what you don't want to do.
Yeah, it also made me realize that after having them, that was life, and my career was okay. It's there. I'm doing it, but there are more important things in life. So it was
Yeah.
a real good check for me. So I wasn't. I know so many actors that's all they focus on is just acting or being in the show business, and it's like there's more to life than that.
Yeah.
And what I've gained from that is experience that I think I can bring to a part as an actor. So
100%. I mean, if we're the storytellers of
mhm.
life,
Yeah,
participating in life in this way, I think is a pretty important and integral aspect
yeah,
to being to play all these people, especially this character that you played, being a father.
hmm
Um, I think that probably helped in your film. I was blown away by what I felt was the shared history between you and your son character.
yeah,
Uh,
Connor. Yeah.
there just felt like there's so much brimming underneath the surface. And I was wondering, how did you create that authentic relationship with this
Well,
actor?
part of it was I was lucky because Connor, who played my son, we were able to spend time to get to know each other just personally. And it helped because it created, at least for me, and I think it did for him too, a relationship and we had a trust when we were working together on camera. And to me, that's huge. You need to be in a situation if especially like the film, it's so intense in places that not only knowing where your character came from, but how they feel about the other person as playing the other character, and being able to say, okay, I can throw something out to him and he's going to throw it back to me, and the ball keeps moving. So it isn't just, oh, me. It's like, no, how does this affect you? And at times we would say to each other, okay, do you need anything from me? What do you need for your coverage, your clothes? And so that kind of give and take and that sense of an ensemble, which again had in theater and through all kinds of for college, and that kind of relationship really helps open up the piece. So you can try things. You can feel like, well, what if I push this? And of course, you have the director who goes, okay, that's too much or that's not
Rein
enough,
it
or
in.
whatever. So you have that third eye, external eye, saying, oh, okay, that's great. Let's move on. So yeah, it's just being in a working situation where you're able to open up to other people and have that relax. For me, being on a relaxed set is much more fun than being on a tense set. And I've been
Oh,
on both
100%.
because
Especially when it's a two-hander and
yes,
you are forced in one room in one scenario.
mhm,
You want to be able to explore those
that's
possibilities.
right.
I always think what actors are doing, we're trying to recreate that feeling of being kids in the playground, right? Where
That's
there's
basically it.
that
I
freedom and
I
making it
always
as
yeah, and
possible.
I always say, I get to play for a job and and to get paid for it. So it's a
Yeah.
great gig.
Yeah, I think maybe sometimes when actors get the scripts, we get very heavy and serious with it,
Mhm.
and we get method and so entrenched in it. But when you realize and rediscover that sense of play and that flow, it can really open things up for you, and that's usually where those best performances come from. So the fact that you had that trust with one another and that
Yeah,
ability to volley off one another is excellent. Because in the playground, you pick your friends based on who you riff with the best and
that's right.
who expands your ideas more, but where that trust is. So
And it's fun to have another artist with you that is willing to play
yeah.
because I've been in situations where you have people who don't want to play. They're all in their own head. They're so into and it's like, dude, I'm here for you. I'm a
Yeah.
human being. It's real. This is how it works in real life. So
Yeah. You
it's
need
not
that
a
relationship.
solo performance. So
No, we're not doing a monologue,
no, we played that
unfortunately,
game.
or fortunately. I think it's actually a
We
joy
don't turn to the camera and go, I think that this is what I feel. And we don't do that.
leg upon the house.
That's
Yes.
right.
No,
Plague upon them.
I'm loving talking to you right now because you are so different from your character. It's absolutely a surprise and a delight. And you created this lovely, nuanced character oscillating between this stoic, stubborn former sheriff, where law is his word,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then this deep vulnerability of loss of agency, and in both his body and his situation, loss of a partner. So,
Yeah.
seeing that you are very different from this character, how did you find him? What was your in? Do you know somebody like him?
Yes, that's the
What have
key.
you? Yeah,
Because I did. My father, again, being a military man, very, very stoic. And he came from a time period where men didn't show emotion.
yes,
So there was a reference I had. And in fact, it wasn't until I was in college that I broke down that wall and told him I loved him. I'd never said I loved him. I respected him, but I never had said I loved him. So there was a real progression in our relationship after that because as two, I was an adult at that time. So as two men, he opened up emotionally. And so it was a really fascinating thing. And I always remember that when I think of people that had this hard shell, but there's something underneath hiding behind them. My dad was a perfect example of that. And he became a totally different human being after that.
mm,
Uh, Especially then when he had grandkids, it was a whole evolution in him as a person that I got to witness. So it was really so he was a someone I always look to when I have a character that's so guarded
yeah,
emotionally, and that's what the sheriff was. The sheriff, again, there's a whole. I had I still have a brother-in-law who was a police officer in Texas, and being around him, it was shocking because when I would go and visit him and see him, and of course I'm Irish and I hug and I would grab him and hug and he would tense up because he was in policeman mode, which was and it's again it's that same thing where you think, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm a free person who goes, hey, how's it going? Yada yada, and he was like, I'm good, and it was just this whole yeah.
fine.
It was real obvious there was, but now since he's retired, he's loosened up. So it's been an interesting evolution of people that I have known that have been very, very stoic, if you will,
Mm,
and you see the change in them if you can break through it.
yeah,
So yeah,
another
so that
example
that
of
character
light.
actually had that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought.
it's so lovely that you have those people in your life that you can mine for this, and it's doing it with curiosity and empathy.
Mhm.
Ultimately, they always say, "Don't judge your character," because you
Right,
really lose out on the possibilities to see those layers to them. Uh,
right, right.
and it paid off. It
And
paid off.
also the whole thing for me of the relationship with the father and the son.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I really liked about the script. There
Yeah.
was so much more there because, he to break through and actually say how he really feels is just so hard for him. And he's so in his own world. I mean, his own grief for losing his wife, and he turns to alcohol, and there are all of these things, and even the bar when they're talking about, oh, well, that wouldn't have been when you were sheriff. So there's this whole sense of past history. It's
Yeah.
moved on, and he's still there. So yeah.
Yeah. When you got the script, you must have thought, oh, this is something
Oh
special.
yeah, I really wanted to do this.
Yeah.
Because I saw the potential. There's so much that Jeffrey, who wrote it, and again, that he was on the set, which was great. And I kept saying, this has feature potential. There's a lot of good stuff here. I was really pushing it because I think there's a human story there that's very touching.
Yeah.
Uh, and coming together. I don't know. It's just it, there were so many things that excited me about it, and Moriah was great to work with as the director. She had an amazing DP, Chloe, which just the way they worked and watching that was fun. Again, I guess the thing that also impressed me was the professionalism of the casting, I mean, the crew and the other cast members that made it so top notch. And as I talked to them, I found out a lot about their school that had changed, and they really were working to up their game and be contenders. And I said, well, the script alone
Yeah.
just says it. So you go from the word first, and then you see what happens. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that there was a real trust in the script with the filmmaking. I appreciated that there was these moments of silence
Yes.
and space so that we could let it sink in. And it really helped those feelings of resentments and regrets, the miscommunication, where as an
Yeah.
audience member, I just wanted to yell out or shake them, be like, just connect, just say how you're
He's
feeling.
right there. He's right there.
There.
Just open up. And
Yeah, it's such a
it's
relatable script. And I see it time and time again in rooms where people just aren't saying how they feel, especially with different hierarchies or older versus younger. So I think, yeah, there was a really great trust in the script with the filmmaking that I thought
yeah.
really sold the story.
I think, and this is just me, I think the biggest regret, if I had one, was the fact that they had to fit under such a tight time frame,
Yeah.
because there were moments that were needed that silence that we had to cut out to tighten things up to fit within that time. But they were there, and I kept saying to Mariah, I said, you ought to make this a longer short, if nothing else, to get all those moments. And she said, I know, but I'm under constraints. I have to be this many, minutes, yada, yada, yada. And it was like, it was so sad because I think I agree with you. I think there's silence that's so powerful in how we, the audience, read whatever is going on in that performer's face. I see things all the time that, and this is just a personal thing. I've enjoyed um, the Marvel universe, but I'm tired of it. I want to see real people in real relationships, and I understand that's a big money maker. But the smaller movies, I don't know if you've ever seen a movie called Lives of Others. It was
No, I
a
haven't.
few years ago, and it's about um, East German Stasi eavesdropping on a playwright and his actress wife. But
Mm.
the relationship in the moments, and he's always listening, and he becomes part of the family and the dynamics of this couple, but he's listening all the time. He's not engaged. It's so touching. It is just a brilliant, brilliant. If you have a chance to watch it or find it,
That's going to be on my
just
list.
yeah, please, because it's a movie that affected me in the fact that okay, here's relationships and people and in the situation, and they're looking for they think the playwright is helping people escape from East Berlin. So it's a real interesting time period piece too. So
Mm.
yeah,
Really interesting circumstances to
exactly. But
that.
within that, the human dynamic is what's so gorgeous, and the way the actors not only perform, but the moments taken within that, and it builds tension, it builds emotion within the characters and in the audience watching it. So it's really, really a beautiful film.
Oh, okay, I'll definitely have to check that
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
I love films where we have something that we're watching, like our two leads, but then there's like a force outside of that. And
sure.
I felt like in your film, almost the landscape felt like another character in the piece. It was almost like the ruggedness, the hardness. There's like the isolation of the farm.
Yeah.
Where was this filmed?
It was actually outside of Los Angeles on in Riverside. So I think Riverside, but it was some distance away. So we separated from, and it had the chicken, the whole 9 yards, which was great. Wrangling the chicken, they were fun. They definitely have a mind of their own. So
Oh, I am sure, which I think is kind of fun for this piece too, with the
yeah,
overarching metaphor of the coop. Now,
of the
in
coup.
terms of, I mean, I have my opinions on it, of course, but in terms of the artistic conversations being had, or for your own personal journey, what was the significance of coop?
Of coop.
Yeah.
Well, several things. A coop is the enclosure. It's part of what's his family, his wife. It's a reference to something she loved, and it's that kind of thing. Okay, I've lost her. I've lost my son. I'm going to keep this going for that memory of, and her relationship to the son, that was a much more personal thing where he never had that.
Yeah.
So I think it was as much a symbolic of him wanting to maintain that, to hold that there as family, as a home. And for me, that was the whole thing of tearing down that wall, saying, okay, I'm opening up to other possibilities. Because as much as anything, the coop is not only a sanctuary, it also is a prison.
Yeah.
The
And it
metaphor
offers
there.
at the end, like, this can't work like this anymore. In
Right,
time,
right.
can
Things
you
have
pay?
to change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. And the idea of you and your son trying to rebuild what was hers,
Right.
but it is no longer hers. So
No,
trying to
it's
figure out maybe what you build anew or
right.
create
We've
space.
moved on. We've moved
Yeah.
on whether we like it or not. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. What was your reaction to seeing the film when it was finally done?
Well, they did great old age makeup on me. I tell you, it was
They
phenomenal.
did. I'm looking at you now. I was like, is this the same guy that I'm talking to?
That's what I said at the screen. The school people were going, "Wait, they did makeup on you?" But no, no. I again was impressed visually how great it looked.
Yeah.
Uh, but again, that goes to the DP and the director and the post production people that made it. But it had again a feel of almost a period piece, even though it isn't. I mean, it's present, but it has that kind of look and feel. I thought the quality was amazing, so I was very happy. Again, I kind of felt it was going to be that way just by the way the crew and everyone worked together, and we had weapons there, so we had a shotgun. There was a lot of things going on, plus the trying to get that at night, so we had the whole lighting. So there's a lot of things that technically they were doing. And as an actor and someone who's worked in post too, and in on the production side of it, I was well aware of how wonderful they were all communicating and making it work. So it's like, okay, this is going to be, if everything falls into place like it is, this is going to really look good. So nothing else is going to look good. And
Yeah.
I'm not speaking for myself. I'm just saying how the look is
How
going
does
to
that
be.
look good? Okay, no, you
I
can
look
you can usually
marvelous in
tell.
this.
You can usually tell in the communication
Yeah.
of, do they know what they're doing or not? And
And
I
I'm
guess
I'm not one of those people that I think sets there's enough stress on the set. It should be fun and relaxed, and there was never anything like that. Like I said, Connor and I were able to go off, and if we had a scene and we had a moment where he said, I'm not sure about this. Even in the blocking, I would go, am I, giving you what you need? And he'd say, yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. And so it's just that being that communication, and you just keep feeling that it's going to be a good thing.
yeah.
Uh,
And it did
And
turn
you wind up wanting the best for the people around you because everyone is trying their best. So,
out.
you know,
What's the reaction been from people seeing the film, from your audiences?
interesting because from what I've heard that, and from the people even at the screenings that the initial screening we had, people were very taken with it, the power of the piece, the moment that people seem to relate to is the fact that when my son does leave, there's that moment where the dad wants to say something but doesn't, and it's like, is it another missed opportunity? But there's hope that maybe he will go down and visit his son and his son's significant other. So I think that to me is depending on how if you're a positive person or if you're a negative person, do you think that happens that or it doesn't? It
Yeah,
revolves. It's how you are as a person.
I think I really appreciated that. There's a trust in the audience's intelligence to not
Hmm.
lay everything out with this film. And I really appreciate films like that and
Yeah.
leaving it open-ended. But for me, I kind of got that if he's tearing down that coop, there's a chance that there is an agency still. And I think he's going to forge forward with that relationship with his son.
Yeah, for me, I think that's the evolution in the character that he wants to reconnect.
Hmm.
There's that desire that he's lost not only his wife but his son too, and it's been through his own um, maybe not racist, but his own prejudices and his own preconceived ideas of who his son is, what his son is, and I think that's what sets him off in the bar. It's not so much that the guy at the bar calls his son a name. It's the fact that, okay, I'm standing up for my family because he still hasn't accepted the fact that his son's gay, and I think there's that whole um, inability to want to relate to it,
Yeah.
and that's the struggle, the internal struggle that he's trying to get over.
Yeah.
Uh, Again, like you said, there's so much there that for me as an audience member makes you think. And I like movies like that too. I think that's the thing that's missing in so many movies now is, yeah, I have my popcorn and then I leave. But if you have to think and you want to discuss it with some, to me, that says, okay, this is something that's got a little more depth. It's got legs, as they say.
Yeah.
There's more here. So
Well, it can enact change because
yeah.
start to,
And
I think,
discussion among people and well, what do you think, what do you feel, well, how do you, and that to me is exciting because it means that okay, we're engaging, we're not just observing.
we're engaging with each other,
Hmm.
which is first and foremost that we're actually
Which is
communicating
becoming a lost
what
art, quite honestly.
media is supposed to do. It's supposed to
Yeah.
create discussion and communication. And we learn a little bit more about ourselves, but also about one another, which
Yeah.
is pretty incredible. And
Yeah,
that's
I remember when I saw The Crying Game, which was about uh, I think it was a British policeman, anyway, who falls in love with a woman, but she's trans, or she hasn't transitioned yet, but and the great question is she still the same person you fell in love with? So does that make a difference and I thought that's a fascinating question because she hasn't changed. She's still the same person. It's just she has an extra appendage that you weren't expecting, as it were. So
yeah,
it's kind of like, okay, but still that's the person you fell in love with.
yeah.
The in not just the exterior, but the interior. So why can and I don't know, I just thought that was a great moment to think, wow, if I
Wake
were
us up and yeah,
yeah,
reframe because we do
reframe.
sometimes
Yeah.
go through life a little bit sleepwalky, I would say,
Mhm.
where we just feel like we know what we know. So it's
Yeah.
great when art can, I think that's the heart of what art is or should
Yes.
be, to challenge
Yes.
us, to wake us up a little bit. and reflect so we
And
can.
reflect, yeah, and question. There's nothing wrong with questioning things, saying, well, wait a second, the status quo isn't always right.
No.
We've evolved immensely. Hopefully,
Yeah. Sometimes
sometimes
the
it
people
feels like we're regressive, but in fact, you know,
at
there,
times.
yeah, at times. But you look for the better person. You look for the chance to say, oh, I I didn't think that way. That's a different view. And I think that that is so important as a person to be willing to see things from a different perspective. And it's so much easier just to close off and say, well, that isn't the way it's supposed to be. It's like, well, wait a second. You have no point of reference. Where yes, in the 1800s, yes, you didn't talk about a woman's legs because that was ugly. Well, you know, so I'm saying something as simple as that. That was a word that was considered taboo to say in the
Yeah.
1800s. So it's like, okay, but
Changed.
we all have legs, and what's the problem here? I don't know. It's just odd
Yeah.
how we've changed over time, but in some things we've regressed. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that's because it's a safe place people like to go to. They feel comfortable in their beliefs and they hate being questioned that there's another viewpoint, another possibility, another opinion, and to not being open to it and say, well, okay, let's see. Let's go beyond that. Um,
I
yeah,
think, yeah, that's a pretty integral part of art is it shows possibilities, but allows us the time to sit with those possibilities
yeah.
in a way. I mean, there are now with the proliferation of media, we're seeing that there are so many ways to live. And I think it can
Mhm.
make people overwhelmed of, am I doing it right? I don't
Yeah.
want to think I haven't done it right. And even with your character, he doesn't want to think that all of his life's work was not the right way of doing things, and it gets people tighter and closer and fighting harder
Hmm.
against what could be a really beautiful other way of living, or just seeing that there is no right way to live, and
Yeah.
sitting with that and sitting with the character might free us, or at least make us a little less tense, you know.
Yeah. I think it's also fear of the unknown.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a big part of what I think such his character is so set in his ways, in his right and wrong, his good and evil. And for whatever reason, he he probably has had people that have been gay in his life around him. They just weren't out,
Yeah.
but he's not aware of that. Everything is the good old boy and the attitude of men are men and women are women, and and the concept of anything different outside of that is just so hard for him to fathom. And I think that was, for me, the backstory was that's what really destroyed his relationship with his son to begin with, is the fact that, you play football, you're a man, you don't do that, and you chase women and drink beer and that whole kind of uh, limited scope of humanity and of yourself and your emotions. So then when he finds out his son is gay, there's just no that's just crossed the line.
Yeah.
Those people don't exist. You're not one of those. You I don't know where you went wrong, but it wasn't because of me, because I taught you to be a man. See, so there's that whole thing that I think deep down he's dealing with, is that
Yeah.
acceptance
Yeah.
of his son. So yeah,
Well, this
again, there's so much there in
there's
that
so
short.
much there. That's why it's such a great film. And if this conversation doesn't make somebody want to watch the film, I don't know what I don't know what
Well,
to do for them.
I hope they do, if nothing else, or unless they're closed-minded and go, well, I don't believe that stuff anyway. So okay, well, we're not going to. There's some people you just can't change.
So
Like you can't. You may bring a horse to the trough, but he doesn't have to drink the water. So,
exactly. Exactly. Well, it was really lovely to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
and thank you so much.
And hopefully we'll talk about some future projects that you have down.
Absolutely. I'll talk
And
about the film festival next time that I went to.
yes, that would be delightful. Well,
Excellent.
so much and have a great rest of your day.
You too. And thanks again for everything.